Hello, my name is Boglarka Fedorko, and I'm the director of Romaversitas Foundation in Hungary. And I've been working as a Romani feminist activist for a little bit more than a decade. And I was engaged in a lot of different social causes in the liberation for LGBT people, transgender people, Roma people, women, those who have been trafficked. So I've been working in very diverse fields in the past decade.
If a Roma child or youth joins the public education system, why will they be less successful than members of the majority society?
So in Hungary, the obligatory school age is 16. It was reduced to 16 from 18 not too long ago. So that, first of all, means that basically no one prevents you from dropping out at the age of 16. So legally, there is no obligation to stay until the age of 18 in the school system. So that's already a very unfavorable condition towards Roma youth, because a lot of times they have economic pressure to provide for their families, because a lot of disadvantages in their lives. One of the key factors here is poverty, deep poverty. They don't have the means to be successful in the education system. So this is one of the big obstacles to successful getting to university and to high school graduation. There is a lot of disadvantages, not because Roma are culturally inferior and don't want to learn and are incapable of learning, which a lot of politicians and the majority society would like us to believe, but because in European societies, Roma live in deep poverty in the most cases. So according to the latest research, 80% of the Roma population in Europe lives below the poverty line. So we are talking about like a racialized phenomenon of poverty here. So a lot of actors on the left usually like to, look at the underclass as homogeneous, but there is a racial aspect to it. So it would be a blind politic to believe that, all poor are the same. And are the same part of the underclass or the working class in some cases. So in Hungary, we can really talk about a racialized poverty phenomenon. So poverty, makes it very difficult to obtain quality education and participate successfully in education, because if you don't have a table to write your homework on, that's again a big obstacle. If your parents are unable to help you with your homework, that's a huge obstacle. So already in the primary school, those Roma kids who are coming from poverty, they acquire a lot of disadvantages. And even though there are some who are not coming from deep poverty, they also face racism. So that is starting very early on in the Hungarian education system, and this viewing the Roma as other, the non-deserving, this also manifests in the practice of segregation. So in 2022, we basically come to a point where almost half of the young Roma children go to segregated schools. And segregation is not only outlawed legally, but is also leads to receiving very low quality education in the Hungarian school system, which is anyhow like crumbling as we speak. So in the whole nation there is protest by teachers and students. And this is usually led by those who go to elite high schools and those who teach in elite high schools in big cities or in the capital in Budapest. So like there is a lot of issues around the whole education system, but this is multiplied when it comes to Roma students. So basically, this segregation, low quality education, lack of support to families, lack of support to Roma parents who are very much stigmatized in the Hungarian discourse. This leads to a school choice when you're 14. Which is either to go to a school, secondary school, which gives you a high school diploma, or go to VET, vocational education training, where you basically learn a profession. And a lot of Roma kids are steered towards learning in the VET system. They are even like financially insensitive. They get like financial incentives as well. So a scholarship system. So this kind of like, again, reflects, the government's view on, Roma, that they would like us to be, low skilled factory workers, or those who, work like, basically they work with their hands. So they don't become intellectuals. They don't become lawyers or teachers. So a lot of kids are steered into the VET system. This means that very, very few Roma children go to secondary education, which gives you a high school diploma, and later on gives you the opportunity to study at university or college. And even those who go into the VET system, a lot of them drop out because the quality of the education is low, because, there is systemic racism inbuilt in the secondary education and at all levels of the education system. And when we get to the third level of education, university or college, what we see is that less than 1% of Roma go to or finish tertiary education. So this is exactly where we are working on. We prepare high school students to go to university, and we support university students to finish their tertiary education and be successful professionals later on.
So what kind of everyday discrimination do Roma face?
So everyday discrimination manifests in, basically all spheres of life. So in housing, in education, which I just talked about, in employment, in healthcare, in whatever sphere of life you can imagine, Roma face racism and discrimination on an everyday basis. And I could cite statistics, about it, like for hours, I think. But I would just like to highlight, a couple of forms of discrimination, which are very, very, very common. I think what is increasing as a form, as a present type of discrimination, is the discrimination in housing. So many people can't imagine that they, turn up for a viewing of a house which they would like to rent, and then they are outright told that, sorry, the apartment has been leased to someone else. This what happens in my experience, and also there is some research around this. 90% of the cases when Roma to-be tenants, turn up for a viewing, or they are already rejected, based on their surnames, based on how they speak in the phone, setting up of an interview. So it's not, hard to imagine, especially now that we are in a housing crisis all over Europe and, in a lot of places of the world with skyrocketing prices, that how frustrating and basically life-threatening it can be not to be able to, rent an apartment. So this starts, very early on. So kids with families wanting to move somewhere else are affected. Elderly people, everyone in the Roma society is affected. Not to talk about the inability financially to rent these apartments. Even if they are able financially, they, get to a point where they are able to rent financially, which is not hard, not easy, because there is a lot of discrimination in employment as well. They basically can't rent an apartment. So this is one of the things that are concerning to me these days, because I see that, this is growing. And of course, in, every kind of situation, you might face discrimination, and it might be very direct, being told in your face that, sorry, we don't accept Roma people here. But it can be, just like more subtle forms of racism, that, oh, sorry, this job vacancy has been filled ever since you applied. And, it's very hard to navigate this system where you don't know, what you're allowed to do and what you can't, basically. So people try to get to these opportunities, but oftentimes they are denied. Roma women, for instance, face like very specific discrimination as well. I think one of the realms of discrimination we hardly talk about is the getting to reproductive sexual health services, for instance. So Roma women are very often stereotyped for, having a lot of children, delivering babies just for the very generous social benefits. And this, gets replicated by healthcare professionals as well. So for instance, on my cycle, friend and family cycle, Roma women don't dare to go to their gynecologists because they fear that they will be told that they are too they have too little children, they have too many children. So, and this is reflected in a very sensitive, situation. Like, going to a gynecologist is, for most people, it's a very sensitive, situation. So, yeah, just to highlight a couple of forms of discrimination very present in the everyday realities.
So what can we do?
It's not an easy question to answer because, we are talking about systemic racism and discrimination against Roma in Hungary and all across the world. So you might, consider individual actions, but they might not lead a long way. That's why I believe that, on the long term, we need political leadership that is taking this issue very seriously and implements concrete actions to tackle racism against Roma. So be sure to, vote for those political parties who have an extensive and ambitious political program that supports minorities, including Roma. And these programs should have been, built together with the constituencies, so Roma people in this case. So look out for, this, whether these programs are ambitious enough and they were including Roma, experts and Roma people into their formulation. So this is a very important if we want to change things for the better on the longer term. Hold, your politicians accountable, not just, the present ones, but those who you would like to support to be in power in the longer term. And second of all, you can also take like very effective and impactful and important, direct actions in your daily life. So I would say first educate yourself, investigate how you feel and think about Roma, because, it's most likely that you've never learned, a single history lesson about them. And while you, through education, popular culture, you discovered that, like you support Black people, you support other minorities, you support LGBT people. And it's kind of like, something that, we take for granted that a lot of, people in society are aware of, Black people's cause, are aware of, migrants' cause. A lot of people are not aware of the Roma cause at all. So I would, suggest to reflect and educate yourself around this issue. And of course, if you are in any kind of like power holder situation, so you're a school principal, you are a company owner, you can very easily, move into directions where you're more conscious about your efforts of Roma inclusion. So if you are a company owner, then have anti-discrimination policy, which is strictly enforced, and work together with Roma organizations so that you can recruit Roma talent as well, and you specifically reach out to them. Be, very direct in formulating that you support members of oppressed communities, minorities to apply for a position, and that you won't discriminate them. And be thorough in your investigation, whether you already have some practices which are exclusive, discriminatory to some. If you're a school principal, be, sure that you apply policies that are inclusive to Roma. So, have a policy that Roma kids who come to your school will be, granted access. Because this is what happens a lot of times, that, only the local, wealthier families can send their children to your school, to a district school. And for some reason, Roma will be rejected. So be very precise in formulating that, all kids are welcome in this school, and be precise in enforcing this policy. And of course, I could go on and on and on in, like tailoring this message to different life circumstances and positions, but I hope you got the message.
Köszönöm szépen. I think we got the message.